A pollutant is a substance or energy introduced into the environment that has undesired effects or adversely affects the usefulness of a resource. Organic pollutants are intentionally produced chemicals currently or once used in agriculture, disease control, manufacturing, or industrial processes. They have unforeseen effects on human health and the environment.
When talking about pollution, there are generally two different ways that pollutants can reach their respective reservoirs. The first and most direct way is called point source pollution. Point source pollution can be described as any pipe, drain, vessel, or container that directly deposits pollutants into a reservoir. An example of point source pollution includes water pollution from factory runoff, as shown here. The second type of pollution that we see is called non-point source pollution. Non-point source pollution can be much harder to track than point source pollution because non-point source pollution consists of pollutants added to a reservoir through indirect means. There are several ways non-point source pollution can enter an ecosystem, but some of the most prominent ways include runoff from rainfall or snowmelt, seepage from pollutants deep in the soil's water column, as well as pollutants carried by the wind that are deposited at sea. Here, we see DDT being sprayed to control pests. It will eventually make its way to the ocean by a non-point source.
Polychlorinated biphenyls, also known as PCBs, are a group of manufactured organic chemicals. They have no known odor or taste. They are oily, yellowish liquids that do not easily burn. There are no natural sources of PCBs. They can only be manufactured. They are used because they are good insulating material and function well as coolants and lubricants in transformers and other electrical equipment. PCBs were domestically manufactured from 1929 until their manufacture was banned in 1979. PCBs have been known to cause cancer in animals, reduce responses in the immune system, reduce newborn birth weights, decrease neurological development, and decrease hormone levels. Some local areas where high PCB concentrations have been found are Pittsfield, Massachusetts, Long Island Sound, the Hudson River, and Messina, New York.
Dichloryl diphenyl trichloroethane, or DDT, is an organochloride first synthesized in 1874. Its insecticidal properties were discovered in 1939. It was used in the second half of World War II to control diseases such as malaria. After the war from 1950 to 1980, DDT was used as an agricultural insecticide, and more than 40,000 tons were used each year worldwide. It was then banned in 1972 due to its toxic effects to the liver and nervous system of humans, carcinogenic effects, bioaccumulation, and other effects on wildlife. In insects, it works by opening sodium ion channels in neurons, causing them to fire spontaneously, leading to spasms and death. It persists in the environment, having a half-life of 150 years. It is lipophilic and semi-volatile. How do pollutants accumulate in certain tissues? Well, here we're testing the solubility of a compound between two phases. These two phases are two immiscible solvents. In the body, the water phase would be the blood serum, and the oil would be the lipid bilayer of cells. This is called the partition coefficient, and it measures how hydrophobic or hydrophilic a chemical substance is. It's used to determine how chemicals distribute within a body. In this test, this compound is completely water-soluble, or hydrophilic, meaning it has a low partition coefficient, and this compound will mostly be found in the blood serum of the body. In this test, you can see how the oil layer is on top, representing the lipid phase, and the water underneath represents the blood serum phase. When mixed together, they go back to their two immiscible phases. Now we will continue on to the next experiment, which contains the water and the oil. We will add the water-soluble compound, and as you can see, it does not reside in oil, but drop down to the water and mix with the water. It shows how this chemical is hydrophilic. Both DDT and PCBs are hydrophobic, and they bioaccumulate because they both reside in the oil or lipid layer of animals. A water-soluble compound would be metabolized by the liver and ultimately excreted in the urine or feces, while a fat-soluble compound would basically stick to your fat and only be metabolized during periods of fat metabolism or starvation. This is when these chemicals can become toxic to animals. Having a chemical in the fat layer or water layer does not make them any more or less toxic, but overall this is showing how DDT and PCBs will reside in the fat, and that's how they bioaccumulate. How does climate change affect persistent pollutants? PCBs and DDT have semi-volatile properties. Their mobility is dependent on something called the grasshopper effect or global distillation. Pollution of DDT and PCBs will result in a sediment core containing the persistent pollutant. The pollutant at higher temperatures will change into the vapor phase partially and release into the atmosphere, where it will be carried to lower temperature regions. The lower temperature region will render the pollutant back to its original state, favoring deposition. This will result in the buildup of concentrations of semi-volatile persistent pollutants in polar regions.
As stated, PCBs were banned for commercial use in the United States in 1979. This was due to many health concerns, a long half-life, and many negative effects on ecosystems, such as being able to travel up food chains and bioaccumulate as they do. Climate change is one of the major factors that will impact future concentrations of both PCBs and DDTs, as warmer temperatures will only lead to a stronger grasshopper effect. Thank you, and I hope you have enjoyed our video on how climate change will affect organic pollutants.